There's something that every man has felt, but few have the courage to say it out loud. While you fight, insist, improve, try to be noticed. There are women who, with a 5-second story, get more proposals than you do in months. Doesn't it seem unfair? Worse, it seems like the more you chase, the more invisible you become. And do you know what's even crazier? Most men still think that the mistake is not being cool enough. The problem is not that you are good. It is that you are playing a game without understanding the rules. Because the truth is only one. Sex does not have the same weight for men and women, biologically, energetically, or socially. And those who don't understand this are living in illusion. But don't worry, there's a way to turn this around. And it doesn't start at the gym, or in your style, or in the phrases you send in direct messages. The change begins with your control. And here comes something that seems small, but changes everything: semen retention. Yes, what so many ignore is actually the key to transforming your energy, your magnetism, and the way women respond to you. When you learn to master your seed, you are no longer the one chasing, you are the one being chosen. And that, my friend, is a game changer. This video will show you everything. No bullshit. No romance. Just the raw truth about how the system works, and how you can use it to your advantage. If you're tired of being the hard-working guy who's never seen, maybe it's time to become the man who no longer needs to prove himself. Because presence isn't something you beg for. Presence is something you build. And that's what we're going to talk about now. The biological difference in sexual supply and demand. There is a silent reality that few have the courage to admit. The sexual game does not start at the same point for men and women. While women are born with a high market value just for being women, men need to earn theirs. She, with a simple selfie, can generate dozens of interactions. Men, however, even if they are well-groomed, need to invest time, energy, and presence to be noticed. This is not machismo, it is biology and the psychology of attraction. And understanding this changes everything. The key here is the perception of effort. A man who wants to be desired needs to build a set of attributes: self-confidence, good communication, posture, energy. None of these come for free. Women, on the other hand, are already desired by default, even without much effort. This creates a natural imbalance. Access to sex is easy for her and rare for him. But it is precisely in this scenario that a little-known weapon emerges: semen retention. Semen retention is a game-changer because it changes the energy a man emits. It's not mystical talk, it's observable. When a man stops ejaculating constantly, he gains vitality, clarity, and presence. His gaze changes. His voice becomes firmer. And suddenly, he's perceived differently by women, not as just another man, but as a rare man. This creates magnetism. And magnetism attracts. While many people are struggling to get their attention, the man who withholds stands out. Because he is not desperate. He is not reacting to scarcity, he is vibrating abundance. And women feel this. Maybe they can't even explain it, but they feel it. A practical example. Compare a man who has just masturbated with one who has been withholding for 30 days. The first is fragile. The second is firm. And why does this matter? Because in the world of attraction, perception is everything. Women aren't attracted to the nice guy who tries too hard. They're attracted to the guy who exudes inner power, the kind of man who doesn't have to say much, but who is naturally noticed when he walks into a room. Semen retention enhances this type of presence. And presence is the new status quo in the male world. While she posts a photo and receives dozens of compliments, he has to fight to have a conversation. This generates frustration. But this frustration can be fuel. The man who understands this stops complaining and starts building. Instead of comparing himself to the female reality, he shapes himself based on what he has control over. And what is under control? His own energy. His own focus. His own destiny. Most men waste years trying to be nice, thinking that pleasing brings love. But pleasing too much conveys weakness. And weakness, in the realm of seduction, is repellent. That's why so many nice men end up alone and confused. What's missing isn't kindness, it's strength. And strength is born in the vital core of a man, his seed. When he learns to guard it, he begins to become truly masculine. If you're a man and you want to be seen as a prize, Stop acting like a desperate hunter. Start acting like someone who has something rare to offer. A man in retention doesn't beg for connection, he selects. And this change in attitude is so impactful that it can even confuse women. They realize that they're not just another needy man, but someone who chose himself first. And that's when everything changes. Because the man you choose first becomes impossible to ignore. He is presence. He is value. He is firmness. And it doesn't matter if you're not rich yet, or if you have the perfect body. With semen retention, you activate an energy that few activate. And this energy, alone, already puts you several steps up on the scale of attraction. Steps that the average man doesn't even know exist. But of course, this new level requires something more. Because there's no point in rising in perception if you continue to fall into the traps of conquest. And that's where the next layer of this knowledge comes in, understanding the difference between conquering and being conquered. Because true masculine power is not in collecting women, but in knowing when to say no. The difference between conquering and being conquered. There is a gap between conquering and being conquered, and few people stop to think about it. When a man gets involved with many women, he usually has to go through filters, rejections, adjustments, and even defeats. Each conquest required effort. He had to develop skills. On the other hand, women, most of the time, just had to accept proposals that rained down on them. And this reveals more than it seems. In order to be good at seduction, a man transforms himself in the process. He learns to speak better, to have posture, to deal with frustration. He hones his character, gains self-knowledge, and matures emotionally. The path is hard, but it shapes his inner value. A woman who merely accepts invitations, on the other hand, is not shaped, she is carried along by the tide. And that makes all the difference when it comes to real value. This is not about judging, but about understanding how energies work. A man with semen retention, for example, begins to choose more carefully. He is not easily enchanted, because his sexual energy is not leaking in any direction. This makes him more selective. And women feel this. They notice when they are in front of someone who is not chasing them, but rather, someone who respects themselves. This type of man doesn't flatter or try to impress. He observes. He listens. He weighs. And this affects the female unconscious. Because women are used to being validated immediately. When they meet someone who makes them doubt their own power of seduction, they become disconcerted. And in this disconcertion, desire arises. Semen retention turns the average man into a walking filter. If you're a man and you've noticed that the more you chase, the more you're ignored, it's because you're in the wrong place in the equation. The desperate hunter scares away the prey. The magnetic man attracts effortlessly. And that doesn't mean being indifferent, it means being whole. It means looking at a woman and thinking, is she worth my energy? Because a man who values his seed, values himself. On the other hand, many women try to erase their old past with a superficial change. They start to flaunt their religion, spirituality, or a forced attitude of purity. But energy doesn't lie. A history of easy surrender can't be erased with a verse on Instagram. And men who practice retention feel this difference. They realize when they're faced with someone who wants to change, or just disguise themselves. It's no wonder that so many nice men end up with emotionally unbalanced women. Because they still operate in needy mode, they accept anyone who gives them attention. The withholding man, on the other hand, operates in king mode. He surveys the kingdom before allowing anyone into the castle. This takes strength, yes. But it also prevents future pain. And it avoids falling into the role of therapist disguised as a boyfriend. Conquering involves choice. Being conquered involves willingness. And the man who wants to be respected as someone of high value needs to learn to filter with strategic coldness. A woman who is used to being flattered will find this behavior strange. But it is exactly this that will make her look twice. Mystery seduces. Clarity frightens. And the combination of the two hypnotizes. Women who give themselves easily often want to be treated as difficult later on. But value is not imposed, it is constructed. What was given without criteria will hardly be valued later as something precious. And this goes both ways. Therefore, semen retention is not just about pleasure. It is about criteria, about energy, about self-worth. And all of this connects to a point that few people see. Why do so many women adopt a rebellious look, excessive tattoos, colorful hair, and affronting behavior? Is it just style? Or is there something deeper being expressed unconsciously? That's where the next topic begins to reveal even more uncomfortable and liberating truths. Tattoos, rebellion, and fatherlessness. When a woman dyes her hair blue, covers her body with tattoos, and displays multiple piercings, many people think it's just a style. But those who understand a little more about the psyche know that the body speaks what the soul screams. These external marks are often visible signs of internal wounds. And the absence of a father is usually the point of origin. The father figure is the foundation of the emotional structure and female validation. Without the gaze of her father, the girl grows up seeking to be noticed. And in today's world, where body and image have become currency, this happens with cruel ease. The problem is that the validation received by exposing one's body does not fill the hole left by emotional absence. It is like drinking salt water when thirsty. It seems to relieve it, but it only makes the thirst worse. And many continue in this cycle, without even realizing that they are trying to call upon their lost father. The most curious thing is that many of these women say they don't like strong, focused, or firm men. They say they prefer the good vibes, the gentle, the deconstructed. But when they come across a man who carries real firmness, like the man who practices semen retention, something in them moves. Because this man represents what was missing: direction, limits, and true masculine presence. A practical example of this happens all the time. A centered man meets a seemingly confident, tattooed, and empowered woman. But after a few dates, she starts demanding constant validation, becomes unstable, and provokes others to test his boundaries. Do you know why? Because deep down, she is trying to relive the original abandonment. And she wants to see if this man will also give up on her. Her psyche is testing her without knowing it. The man who doesn't understand this becomes a therapist. He gets involved, tries to save, tries to heal, and sinks too. On the other hand, the man with semen retention, with his more refined energy and his deeper perspective, identifies this early. He doesn't judge, but he doesn't give in either. He knows that it's not his job to rescue anyone. Because until she faces her own abyss, she will continue to project her pain onto every man who comes near. This attitude does not come from coldness, but from lucidity. And lucidity is what is lacking in most modern relationships. Men addicted to sex and pornography have no emotional filter and easily fall into this type of trap. A man in retention, on the other hand, has clarity. He sees beyond the makeup, the curves, the provocative tattoos. He notices if there is a wounded soul trying to camouflage itself in an overly decorated body. Rebellion, in this case, is a cry for help in disguise. Flashy hair, bold clothes, affronting behavior, all of this is a way of shouting, "Look at me, validate me, prove that I exist." But the problem is that, even though she is looked at, she doesn't feel seen. Because the look she seeks is that of her father who wasn't there. And no man in the world can fill that void until she looks at him. What often happens is that when these women find a strong man, they go into crisis. Because he doesn't give in, doesn't melt, doesn't lose himself. And this triggers in them the memory of pain. Some run away. Others try to dominate. And few are able to look inside and begin a real healing process. But everything starts with perception. And the man needs to know this so as not to get lost trying to save what doesn't even want to be saved yet. That is why the true man, the one who guards his energy, who lives retention with integrity, learns to protect his field. He does not allow other people's needs to enter his inner temple. He relates to those who add, not those who drain. And he knows that a relationship is only healthy when there is emotional reciprocity, and not vampirism disguised as passion. Energy is life, and life is not wasted. Now, if the pain of father absence creates rebellion, the opposite also happens. When a woman feels constantly validated by sexual invitations and proposals, she begins to confuse desire with value. And this confusion shapes an entire generation. A generation where feminine value is distorted, and masculine value is lost. And what seemed like just a game of vanity hides a much deeper crisis. The modern woman and the distortion of sexual value. It has never been so easy for a woman to be desired, and at the same time, it has never been so difficult for her to feel truly valued. We live in an era of digital hypervaluation. All it takes is a few photos, a filter and a touch of provocation for hundreds of eyes to turn to her. But this, instead of boosting self-esteem, has eroded the sense of real value. Because what is very accessible, by nature, loses value. In the past, sex was a consequence of connection. There was a logic. First you got to know each other, then you got involved, and lastly you surrendered. Today, this order has been reversed. Sex has become a lure, a currency, an escape, or simply a pastime. And this, over time, leaves deep scars. Many women wake up after years feeling emotionally empty, even when surrounded by external validation. This false sense of power creates a dangerous kind of illusion. Women believe they are in control because they choose who they get involved with. But in practice, they are being chosen by men who only want their bodies, not their souls. And when they realize this, they have already given too much away. Sexual value becomes dissociated from emotional value. And the result is a vicious cycle of giving that does not fulfill. Now, here comes an important point for men. Just because a woman is beautiful and accessible does not mean she deserves your energy. A man who practices semen retention understands this deeply. He does not get carried away by the first curve or easy smile. He looks for consistency, depth, coherence. He knows that a woman devoid of essence can suck more than any vice. This type of man is not cold. He is aware. And precisely because of this, his choices become more selective. While most people run after instant pleasure, he seeks connection with purpose. And when he finds a woman who truly loves herself, he feels the difference in her gaze, her posture, her silence. Retention sharpens the radar. The body begins to identify what the mind previously ignored. On the other hand, many women try to change their ways after a period of promiscuity. They now want a man who sees them as special. But the past weighs heavily. And it's not sexism, it's memory. The image of someone who gave in easily is recorded in the collective unconscious. A reputation, once broken, can even be repaired. But it's hard to go back to the way it was before. And this applies to both sexes. Want an example? Just look at social media. A woman who has been posting sensual photos for years suddenly starts posting verses and self-help phrases. She may even be trying to change, but the perception has already been created. And the man who practices semen retention feels this disconnect. He notices when the change is external, but the essence remains hungry for attention. To rebuild value, it takes more than just the appearance of change. It takes inner work, emotional healing, strategic silence, self-control. A woman who truly wants to change her image must first change her essence. And that takes time, patience, and sacrifice. The same goes for a man who wants to stop being a hostage to sexual neediness. He needs to educate his own desire. This is where retention comes in as a filtering tool. A man who doesn't ejaculate for no reason doesn't choose for no reason. And because of this, he has a hard time connecting with women who are still stuck in digital validation. He sees what most people don't. He feels the difference between presence and need, between surrender and manipulation. And when this perception becomes natural, relationships transform. But all of this leads us to an even deeper point. Because the distortion of sexual value is not an isolated phenomenon, it is a reflection of something bigger, an inversion of values that has taken over society, where the banal has become the norm and the sacred has become a joke. And that is where the next topic shows us how this distortion has become a system. The new social order and the real inversion of values. We live in a time when logic seems to have been thrown out the window. The firm, silent, disciplined man, once called an example, is now seen as cold, arrogant, and insensitive. Meanwhile, the emotionally out-of-control woman, who lives off exposure and promiscuity, is hailed as empowered. The problem is not with the people, but with the system that has redefined what is right. And when the system rewards emptiness, what is fulfilled becomes a threat. What was once admirable is now ridiculed. Being chaste has become a joke. Being prudent has become repression. Having limits has become machismo. And in this scenario, the man who decides to go against the grain feels the weight. The good news is, this weight molds. While the weak fade into the mass, the strong harden. And the man with semen retention, precisely because he does not bow to the standard, becomes rare. And the rare is the new valuable. Look around. Most men are held hostage by pornography, casual sex, and the anxiety of female validation. And they pay the price for it: drained energy, low self-esteem, and a lack of purpose. It's like they're running in circles, always hungry but never satisfied. Semen retention is the break from this cycle. It's the reprogramming that says, I choose where my energy goes. Many people don't understand. They think it's just about not ejaculating. But it's not about what you avoid, it's about what you build. A man who holds back, meditates more, focuses more, chooses better. He reads books that no one else reads, like Man and His Simbalsof Jung, or The Path of the Peaceful Warrior. It trains the body, cleanses the mind, guards the soul. It becomes presence. And presence does not need to shout. The world will try to ridicule this type of man. It will call him a prude, an old-fashioned man. But the world also silently admires what it cannot copy. Because deep down, everyone knows that living off easy pleasures is slow suicide. And those who choose the path of discipline become beacons. No matter how hard they try to turn off the light, it is disturbing, because it reveals the shadows of others. On the other hand, many women reset the past by assuming spiritual masks. They start attending churches, posting verses, talking about inner healing, but they continue with the same emotional patterns as before. This is not transformation. This is emotional makeup. And the man who practices retention feels this in the air. He is not fooled by appearances. He perceives if there is truth in the behavior. This man knows that true spirituality is not shown, it is lived. And that repentance is not proven with pretty phrases, but with silent actions. He understands that a truly healed woman does not need to convince anyone. She exudes balance, she does not cry for attention. And for this reason, he protects himself from the emotional traps that come disguised as evolution. In a society of inverted values, maintaining integrity is a revolutionary act. The man who controls his sexual energy is like a rock in a sea of instability. He is sought after, respected, followed, but never manipulated. Because his foundation is not neediness, it is conviction. And when someone lives with conviction, it doesn't matter what the world says. He has already won inside. And this victory is not just internal, it shapes reality. He begins to attract people with purpose, true connections, real opportunities. He doesn't waste time on cheap distractions. Because he understands that his time is too valuable. And that his sexual energy, when stored and transmuted, transforms into focus, clarity, leadership. Semen retention, in this context, becomes an invisible throne. But of course, all of this only works for those who have the courage to ask the question that no one wants to face. Why do women have so much access to sex, and men have to fight so hard? What does this reveal about the hidden game we are playing? And how can retention become the key to changing this entire game? That is what the introduction to this script will begin to reveal. Now that you understand how the game really works, the question remains, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to continue trying to be validated by women who don't even validate themselves? Or are you going to start building the kind of presence that doesn't need to beg for attention? Because a man who masters his own energy is a man who scares and attracts. How many times have you given yourself to someone who didn't value you? How many times have you felt empty after seeking pleasure in the wrong place? It's time to stop wasting your life force and start using it as fuel for transformation. Semen retention is not a prison, it's freedom. Freedom of choice, of action, of focus. And most importantly, freedom to become the man you were born to be. Think about it. How many men around you are living on autopilot, giving themselves over to any crumb of pleasure? And how many are truly in control? The answer already shows what sets you apart. If you've come this far, it's because there's something bigger inside you. Something that isn't content with the shallow. So now it's up to you. Will you apply it? Or will you watch and forget? And most importantly, what has prevented you from experiencing this transformation so far? Fear, doubt, addiction. Whatever it is, the decision to change starts now. And if you want to continue on this path with clarity, discipline, and power, this channel will walk with you. But it needs your attitude. It needs you to take a stand. After all, do you really want to continue being just another person? If this content touched you in any way, leave a comment below. Tell me what touched you the most. And of course, like, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because this is not entertainment, it's a call. And if you heard it, it's because it's time to answer it.